Good evening, everybody. This is Terry Layton, the chairman of the Alabama Republican Party. We welcome you all tonight.
Hello, it's John Kasich.
Hey, Governor Kasich, there you are.
How are you? I'm sorry. I'm at a fundraiser and one thing after another, and I'm proud that I'm here. I'm now here.
Well, we're so glad that you're with us. I understand we actually had to bump your call back an hour because I believe you're traveling. Was it Virginia tonight? And,
yeah, I'm in Virginia right now, and but I'm now with you, and I want to say that University of Alabama football team is looking awfully good. But I know we must have people on here from Auburn, so I better be careful.
Okay, well, first of all, you're very, very wise and polished to mention both of the universities here in the state. That's important.
Yeah.
And I always talk with our presidential candidates, we talk about football in our state. I think politics sometimes actually is harder to talk about. But we appreciate you jumping from a plane and into a fundraiser and on the phone with us. I was about to read out some really great facts about yourself to introduce you.
Well, go ahead and I'll listen.
No, you could probably do a better job than me. But let me just tell you who is on our line, and then I'll give you the floor, and you tell us your story and about you, your family, and your vision for America, and then we'll ask you some great questions.
Great.
We have several hundred members, grassroots activists of the Republican Party of our great state of Alabama on the phone listening. And these are people that we think that you're spending your time in to get our attention. And we have some fantastic candidates this year, the best crop I've seen in my 40 years in the party. And you're one of them. And so I just want to turn the floor over to you. Thank you for stepping into Alabama tonight, one of the reddest states in the nation. And just tell us your story, Governor Kasich, and then we'll pick up on some questions.
Great. First of all, I want to tell you that one of the great days that I had was when Governor Bentley called and said that, he determined that I'm somebody that really cares about people and that he wanted to endorse me for president. It was really, really fantastic, and we had a great event, and it was just very meaningful and something that I'll remember really, frankly, and treasure for my lifetime. It was special. I am the son of a mailman father, blue collar. His father was a coal miner. My mother's mother was somebody she was an immigrant. She could barely speak English. My mother was very opinionated and smart, but undereducated, never went to college, which was a shame. The town I grew up with is like many towns really in Alabama, where if the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves out of work. In the town where I grew up, it was almost all Democrat. So I grew up in an environment where understanding the anxieties and needs of people is something that, that's part of my DNA. I was elected to the state Senate when I was 26 years old. It was a big deal in Ohio because we represented about 350,000 people. From the minute I got in, I was a reformer. I'm a Republican, but I'm a reformer. And I'm an American and an Ohioan before anything else. I served for 4 years in the legislature, offered my own budgets there, really made every effort I could to change the way that things worked there and work with people on the other side of the aisle to get a couple significant things done in the area of health care. I then, in 1982, ran for Congress. I ran on the Reagan agenda, a man I had met in 1976 at the convention, and worked for and worked directly with. And in 1982, I ran on that Reagan agenda when he was extremely unpopular. I was the only Republican in America to defeat an incumbent Democrat in 1982. And so I got on the Armed Services Committee for my first 6 years, and I became a defense reformer because I found the hammers, the screwdrivers, and the wrenches that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and I became what's called a cheap hawk. And I actually worked with one of your great Democrat leaders, a conservative from Sylacauga by the name of Bill Nichols, who I love dearly. In fact, I delivered one of the eulogies at his funeral. I then got on the Budget Committee 6 years in and started offering my own budgets because I thought that neither the Republicans or the Democrats really had any firepower or any great ideas, and I thought that the budget needed to be balanced. I spent 10 years of my life at it, became the senior Republican in 1993, It was during that year that I worked with Tim Penny, the Democrat, to try to cut a penny out of every dollar in federal spending, only to lose narrowly because I was opposed by both Republicans and Democrats. We lost by 5 or 6 votes in an effort to cut a penny out of every dollar. I then became the chairman of the Budget Committee in '95 and became the chief architect of the Balanced Budget Agreement. And in order to do that, of course, we had to basically reform every single aspect of the federal government, from entitlements to education to science to the military, everything. All the programs we had to deal with. We ended up achieving a balanced budget. We had paid down the largest amount of debt in the modern history of our country. We had a projected $5 trillion surplus and cut taxes on risk-taking and investment and provided a family tax credit to strengthen the family. I then left Washington for 10 years, and I did a variety of things in the private sector. I was a banker with Lehman Brothers. I was on boards. I made speeches. I wrote a bestseller. And then many of you will remember me because I was a giant television star on Fox News. Just kidding. And then for 10 years. And then I felt a call because I think to whom the Lord blesses, the Lord expects. And I felt I could fix Ohio. I went in. We were 20% of our general revenue fund was in the hole, an $8 billion deficit. We'd lost 350,000 jobs. Our credit is ready to go down the drain. And 4 years later, we're now running a $2 billion surplus. We've cut taxes by $5 billion, the most of any sitting governor in America today, including killing the death tax, lowering the income tax, and virtually wiping out all income taxes for small business. Our credit is strong. We're up 347,000 private sector jobs. And at the same time we've done that, we've left nobody behind. So if you're mentally ill, drug addicted, the working poor, developmentally disabled, a member of the minority community, we want to help you. And I did run for re-election. I won by over 30 points. I won 86 out of 88 counties, 26% of the African-American vote, 51% of union households, 60% of women. And never thought I'd be running for president, but one thing led to another. And now I'm running, and we need regulatory reform, a balanced budget, a changed tax code, a rebuilt military, strengthen relationships with the allies, and to stop fighting every single day down there in Washington and finally get something done. So I have a record. I have experience. This is not just, wild talk on my part. I know how to do these things, and I've done them. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, if I had a story and a resume like that, I'd stick to it too. Trust me, you don't need to veer from that path. That is wonderful. The one thing you did mention I was most when I was looking at some facts on you was your twins. You have a set of twin daughters. Am I correct?
Well, yes, I have 2 beautiful daughters. They are going to be 16 in January. I've got a great, beautiful, smart wife, and she went to Atlanta over the weekend, and I was in charge for Saturday and Sunday. I'd say I did a mediocre job. Girls were going to homecoming. I had to be there to see them off. And one of them has a boyfriend, and so I had to have a little talk with him, which went quite well. And, I absolutely, I love them. And my biggest challenge is to let go of them because, in a lot of different ways, the Lord's in charge, not John Kasich, the dad, and my wife has done a great job. And what can I tell you? It means everything to me. My faith, my family, and my friends. And last, my golf game.
Oh, in your golf game, okay. I won't ask you about handicaps and those kind of numbers. It looks like we got a lot of numbers to talk to here about with you tonight. I will say, and I won't put you on the spot, I will not ask you if balance in the national budget is harder than raising 16-year-old twin girls. So I will not ask you that question. Our kids,
honestly, in all seriousness, our kids are doing just great. And they're just great kids, and I hear it from everybody. They're polite, they're smart.
Good.
And they got all that going. And the challenge for me is to trust them. Can't be in charge of them for all their life. You know the way that goes.
I certainly do, two of my own. I tell you what, we'll go ahead and move into the questions, and these are from party members and donors across the state of Alabama. Our first topic is going to be on leadership. Warren from Mobile wants to know what would be your top priorities as president.
Well, it's economic growth is the most important thing, because without economic growth, you don't have anything. So that's really critically important. In many ways, that's a national security issue, because if we can't fix problems and we can't be strong economically, none of the rest of it works. But I also believe we need to restore U.S. leadership in the world. I mean, if you were to ask me what are the three things that I would do, one is a roadmap to a balanced budget. That requires a reform of some of the energy. We've got to promote energy. We have to deal with the problem of overregulation. We've got to change our tax code, particularly our corporate tax code. We've got to have a plan that moves us at least in the direction, maybe not all the specifics, but many of them, to get us to a balanced budget. And I have the credibility to do it. I know I'm new at this. I've only written 18 budgets in my lifetime. Literally, I think it's 18. And also to work on workforce. All these things have to be done at once. And frankly, you're going to have about 120 days for a new president to have a honeymoon to push through an enormous agenda that can frankly shake Washington from top to bottom. But to get us to work, we're going to need a whole series of things, including the tax reform, the regulatory reform, a path to a balanced budget, the need to deal with entitlements, and rebuild the Pentagon while reforming the Pentagon. Or rebuild the military while reforming the Pentagon. These things there's so much to do. You got to figure out what you can get done in a short period of time, and then you got to run like crazy to get those things done. One other thing about leadership, after my first year as governor, I was the most unpopular governor in the state, in the country, and I get reelected and won a county that Barack Obama won by 40 points. I won that county, and by the way, for all the people that are listening in Alabama, I don't know whether you know this, but no Republican has ever been elected president without winning Ohio.
Yes, we do know that. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, we do. We do know that.
Okay.
That's very important for sure. On that same topic of leadership, Derek from Jefferson County, which is around the Birmingham, Alabama area, wants to know, are there any big concerns that you have that no one else running for president is really talking about that you like focusing on?
Well, look, I want to just say a thing about leadership. Leadership is the willingness to walk a lonely road, not worry about polls and focus groups, not get too far ahead of the public, but certainly not be in the crowd. There is one other thing that a lot of things I'm concerned about, but one thing that is extremely concerning to me, and that has been the rejection of the Jewish and Christian tradition from our culture, from our town squares, and even particularly over in Europe, where if you take a bowling ball and you roll it through a church, you don't have any fear that you'd ever hit anybody. Our Western civilization has got to embrace the notion that we are going to be held accountable by a higher power, that represents really a hope and a healing and living a life bigger than ourselves, and the reemergence of community with people understanding that their role is to live a life bigger than themselves. And, I don't know what all the people in Alabama think about the Catholics. I will tell you that I think the Pope's visit was so wonderful, because he talked about our potential as human beings. He talked about the need for us to realize that we can't live a life just about ourselves, but as something bigger than ourselves, that grace and hope and forgiveness is a part of life. And in a free society, we know that an individual has to self-regulate, and that's not focusing all the rules, because we need to initially focus on the do's: love our neighbor, humility, love people who forgive people who hate us, the need to not just be focused on ourselves, to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. These are all critical things that need to be restored and discovered again in America, because our young people are hungry for meaning in their lives. And this is a very important part of the things I talk about. It's not what a president can pass or pass a law, but it is something that a president can exhibit.
Yeah, I tried to follow him as much as I could. I think the takeaway maybe from the Pope's visit was he tapped America on the shoulder and said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And it was I thought the timing was excellent. Our country needs to remember that right now. Here's a question for you. You mentioned the debate a minute ago. anonymous that actually sent in a question, said, tell us what goes on to preparing the presidential debates that we're all watching. How do you prepare? Do you have any pre-debate rituals? What's it like to be backstage?
Well, in the last debate, you had to go and take your car and enter a couple demolition derbies to make sure that you could compete the race without having your car destroyed. I mean, the last debate was, bordered on the ridiculous. And the format was bad. The ability of people to speak was very limited. And I thought it was not conducted in a very good way, very disappointing. The first debate was more controlled, and hopefully as we move forward, each of these folks are going to learn the debate is not about ratings or anything else. It's about trying to get people to talk about the issues that really matter. In terms of preparing for it, a little bit of preparing, but frankly, for me, it's you want to be yourself. And what I try to focus on is just being relaxed and enjoying myself and realizing what a unique experience to be part of this and to run for president. I usually do have a meal, a pre-debate meal, which is always good.
Sure. I believe I read somewhere that you're not a big fan of teleprompters or notes.
Well, I'm not very good with a teleprompter. I do believe in, having some notes and things like that to communicate. But look, you can go on YouTube and see, a million speeches that I make, and I'm fundamentally a person that likes to speak. I kind of know where I want to go, but I don't like using a teleprompter. I'm going to have to learn how to use one. But I feel like when I'm using a teleprompter, I got a ball and chain chained to me, and I really like to be a little bit more spontaneous.
Excellent. I'm going to combine two questions here on federal spending and the tax code. One is from Jerry from Mobile and Jim from Jefferson. Can you provide an outline of your plan to cut federal spending and how much? How long would it take you to balance the federal budget if you were president? And what would you do to reform the tax code?
Yeah, first of all, in the period of the next couple weeks, I'm going to have a more definitive answer to this as we work through how long it will take. But to the people who are on here, again, like I say, I think I've written 18 budgets, which affected things like Medicare, Medicaid, all the spending in the federal government. And when people are asked that question, anybody who gives you an answer right now probably doesn't know what it takes to get it done, to be honest with you. So we're looking at the things we're going to have to spend more money on, which involves defense spending. We're looking at the tax plan that we think will drive the most amount of economic growth, but it's going to probably, at least on a static model, cost us more money. And so we will have something to say about all this over the period of the next couple of weeks. As hard as it is to believe, I've only been a candidate for a little bit more than 2 months, but I'm not trying to duck the question. Again, I wrote a budget in, I wrote a budget in 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000. I've written 3 or 4 budgets as the governor of Ohio. We will tackle every single one of these problems, but we have to do it in such a way that it can pass, that it can be acceptable, and you can't get it by just cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, believe me.
Did I read somewhere?
Did you ask about the tax code?
Yes.
I think the simplest tax code to pass is a corporate tax code where we can repatriate the money from Europe, provide more expensing and depreciation for companies so that they can be in a position of where they will invest in plant equipment so workers can have tools to be more productive and get higher wages. And the corporate tax rate is too high. There's no question about that. And on the individual side, we're still working kind of what the top rate ought to be, what the preferences ought to be, and I'll have more to say about that over the course of the next couple weeks.
Super. Did I read somewhere that when you were working on the budgets on the Hill, that which you were a major influence on balancing it, that you would have some issues with President Clinton, some struggles back and forth in that, and had to stand up to some things?
Well, yeah, I was involved in the first government shutdown, and the reason we shut it down that time is I knew we could finally get it done. Bill Clinton's a guy that if there's a riot coming at him, he jumps in front of it, calls it a parade. I was involved in the shutdown, but I spent 10 years of my life to get us to a balanced budget. I wrote plan after plan after plan. I even fought against George Bush, the first president, Bush president, because I didn't think his budget was very good. So, it doesn't matter to me who the heck I got to step up and say we got to fix the country. If it means that I have to take on some Republicans, that's life. But at the end of it all, I became the chairman of the Budget Committee. I was the chief architect, one of them. Pete Domenici and I were the two chief architects of balancing the budget. It was the first time we did it since we walked on the moon, and we haven't done it since. When I left Washington, we had a projected $5 trillion surplus, all of which was blown by a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican President. How do you like that one? We cannot do that kind of stuff. We have to control spending, because when we don't, we're mortgaging our children's future, and that is not acceptable.
Well, it's important to Republicans to practice what we preach, for sure.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Let's practice what we preach. You've got to remember that all politicians are tarred with the same stick, and if there's one thing they like to do, it's spend.
Well, we hope to turn that around with a
telling you the way it is.
No, we hope to turn that around with a Republican in the White House, the Senate, and the House, and let's see if we can get back to remembering our foundation.
Yeah, and that takes leadership. In my own state, when legislators want to spend a lot of money, I just say no. And if I have line item veto authority, and if they want to spend, I'm going to veto. It's just the way it has to be. I'm not going to get us back into fiscal irresponsibility, and I won't as president. We can get this done. We can get it absolutely done, but it will not be easy, and it takes two things: restraining the spending of government and growing the economy.
And that is difficult for human nature, to restrain ourselves when we think we just go and do something, just go get some more money, make a sign a bill, whatever. It does get a little bit hard for us to say no. Let's go to foreign policy real quick. Ren from St. Clair County.
But let me just talk about that for a second.
Go ahead.
You are not in public life you're in there to be a leader. You're not in there to respond to those people who yell the loudest. And if you lose because you stood up for something that's a great principle, it'll hurt. But it'd be the only thing worse. The one thing that would be worse than that is not standing on any principle and losing. So no, it's just something we can't gloss over. Republicans were born, as Bob Novak, the great columnist, used to say, to cut taxes and cut spending. And that's just the way we were made. And if we don't do it, then it's a big mistake. Okay, foreign policy. Go ahead.
No, great, absolutely. Ren from St. Clair County wants to know about ISIS. He's very concerned about that, wants you to address that topic. What would you do about, not you do about ISIS, but a policy or a foreign policy about this very big concern?
Well, ISIS needs to be destroyed, because that's an attack on the very values of the Western civilization. And I've been arguing for a long time it should be a coalition that would go and destroy them and get our job done and then come home. I've most recently suggested that we create a no-fly zone in Syria, that we create sanctuaries for people to be able to come to be safe with their families. When you create a no-fly zone, if anybody violates it, then they're going to have to understand the consequences of doing it. We should be there also working to eliminate Assad from Syria, and we should be trying to assemble a coalition to destroy ISIS. But look, we're 18 months away from who's going to be the next president, and I don't know where we're going to be. I know that this president, he responded indirectly to what I said about a no-fly zone by saying it was half-baked. I'm glad he didn't use my name, because then I didn't have to come back and say anything about what this administration is doing over there in a half-baked way.
Well, that would be nothing. That would be the null set at this point in time, unfortunately. This is one we're going to have to play out for sure. We're definitely going to need someone strong there that's willing to draw a line in the foreign policy. And I think a lot of Americans are we feel kind of let down right now, and we're tired of at least looking like we're always running from something or not being strong enough to stand up for something. So I think Republicans are definitely looking for that in in our election. Let me move to a question real quick here on sanctuary cities. Someone wants to know, what are your thoughts?
I'm not for sanctuary cities. I'm for finishing the wall and making sure we can protect our border. I am for a guest worker program so people can come in and out legally. And then for the ones that are here, if they violated the law, they need to either go to jail or be deported. And for the ones that are here that have been law-abiding, I think they should pay a penalty, wait in line, and be on a path to legalization. I think it can pass. I think it's reasonable, and I think it's achievable.
Super, super. I'm going to end up on last question here. I know you've got another event to go to. We're so grateful for your time. Bobby from Madison County, which is the Huntsville area, wants to know what your position is on, you mentioned about national defense a little while ago, specifically the decline of military personnel, decrease in training and funding, and the significant decrease in research and development for defense, which is so important to our nation.
Right. Well, I think that we're shrinking the number of people in the Army too low, and I would restore some of it. And over time, I would work to rebuild the Navy. I mean, obviously, all the services need to be rebuilt, and we need to have a cybersecurity plan so that we can, we're not going to be hacked and have our military secrets and our personal information taken away from us. It's very, very important. And in terms of research and development, the one thing we need to do is cut back on the bureaucracy inside the Pentagon that has chewed up an awful lot of money in waste, delay, but we have to rebuild the military. I mean, we cannot have a military that is going to be challenged. It has to be something that's second to none, so we're going to have to spend more money. But at the same time, we can't waste money through a wasteful acquisition process, through bureaucracy, red tape. We almost have 900,000 people who are involved in administering programs. That's too many. We've got to shrink the layers of bureaucracy, and we've got to get to the point where we can produce things in a common sense way.
Well, we do. And I have several more questions from Alabamians. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and we're so grateful that you stepped into our state tonight. I'd like to tell you on a personal note, I was in Cleveland on August 2nd when the RNC met, and the citizens of Ohio, particularly Cleveland, treated us with the utmost respect. It was a joyous time to be there, and we're looking to coming back in July in your state. We want to thank you for your time.
And if anybody's interested in helping, which we would like, you go to johnkasich.com.
There you go.
Kasich. After I do really well in New Hampshire, you'll have no problem with the spelling. We would love to have you. We have a number of people from Alabama who are helping us, and would love to welcome all of you in. And here's what I would tell you. In my mind's eye are the people who first helped me to get elected in public life. They're the folks that walk door to door. They're the people that put up the signs. The people who have the money, the power, and the influence are not the ones that tell me what to do. No one tells me what to do outside of my wife. And so if you want to get involved, if you want to change this country, go to johnkasich.com. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. God bless you in your travels, and thank you for your service to our nation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.